Well, I guess this will upset the Christian churches and a lot of the synagogues and a lot of the theologians again. In my previous report, I gave you a full rundown on Jeremiah 31 and the origin of Israel, and in particular, I gave you a report on the New Covenant. And of course, you've got people running around the world today saying that they are part of the New Covenant. You've got people saying that the New Covenant was a covenant that did away with the Sabbath day, in other words, wiped out the fourth commandment out of the 10 commandments. You've got all sorts of theologians running around with false theories about the New Covenant. I remind you again, have a look at the two reports I gave you and the chart with all of the kings of Judah and all of the kings of Israel. And in particular, when you see not one king of Israel kept the 10 commandments of God, and only 5 kings out of Judah kept the commandments of God. The rest of them did not keep the commandments of God. Now, in this report, I'm just going to show you about the words that you'll often read in the Bible about Yahweh, God, is going to shake the heavens and shake the earth again. I'm going to refer back again to Jeremiah, because Jeremiah was writing about an Israel that was totally disappeared. Don't forget, Israel had disappeared more than 150 years before Jeremiah wrote these stories. And Jeremiah was fully aware that Israel had been totally rejected, totally dispersed, totally done away with by the hand of Yahweh, and no longer existed. As a matter of fact, they were all taken captive and they were spread throughout the world, let alone spread throughout, at that time, Assyria. Well, here we've got another false lot of theories going around about the end times, the end days, the time of the end. And I'm going to give you the verses to read yourself, and you'll be the judge of what actually is going to happen. But in particular, you remember that it's not hard to realize why the churches, the pastors, the rabbis teach error from the Bible. You buy Bibles today that have got a preconceived notion, something that was regurgitated 100 years ago, and it's in the columns, it's in the commentaries of what each chapter is referring to, and nobody seems to realize that they're listening to and reading somebody else's opinion that was put there 100 years ago, which is false. It's wrong. There's no doubt that Yahweh God, the Creator God, has put a message there for the people in the last days, because many, many times he refers to the last days, in the last days, in the last day. At the time of the end, this will happen. At the time of the end, this will happen. So we've got to take the words very carefully. You don't have to change them. You've got theologians, you've got pastors, you've got rabbis, and they'll tell you that that is the interpretation meaning. Well, that's rubbish. I mean, black is black, white is white, and if the words say something, that's what's going to happen. And you don't have to have a scholarly pastor from your church to interpret what the proper meaning is. And I'll tell you something else. Don't forget the New Testament was only tacked on to the Tanakh, or the Old Testament, was only tacked on there roughly in the 15th century. Before that, there was no such a thing as the New Testament, so don't go by the New Testament. The New Testament, again, is about what other people thought. And if you look at the Septuagint text, the received text, the Textus Receptus text, you're looking at texts which were handed down originally from Hebrew, then into Latin or into Greek, Greek into Latin, Latin into English, and you've got a Bible today that's gone through 2 or 3 interpretations. All of the prophecies that are interpreted by various denominations and the Jews in the Bible, written up in the Bible, are all referring to prophecies on the main that have gone, finished, been done away with, happened in the past. Well, that's impossible. I'll tell you why it's impossible, because they're not taking any notice of the words. Now, I know that Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Daniel 8, Daniel 9, right through to Daniel 10, 11, and 12, they will tell you that they're prophecies that have been finished, done with. They're all in the past. And for example, when we look at the image of Nebuchadnezzar's dream, when Daniel was telling the king what the meaning of that interpretation was, The words in verse 28 is, and I'll read it to you, and you can have a look with me. Let me get it up. This is Daniel 2, for example. Verse 28, the words, Daniel says, the great God of heaven is telling you what will happen in the last days. What will happen in the last days. Now, some versions of the Bible will call latter days, or time of the end. But it's certainly not referring to Babylon being defeated by Medo-Persia, which was defeated by Alexander the Great in 321 BC, who was defeated by Rome and so on. We're not talking about conquers by war, because I'll tell you why. Let's read it together. In chapter 2, 34, Daniel speaking after he's received in his dream what the meaning came from Yahweh. You watched while a stone was cut out without human hands. Now, if a stone was cut out of a mountain without human hands, it was obviously by the hand of God, the hand of Yahweh. This stone struck the image on its feet and of the iron. But watch the words here. 35. Then the iron, Rome, the clay, the bronze, Greece, the silver, Medo-Persia, and the gold, Babylon, were all crushed together. Now, if they were all destroyed together, obviously, we're not talking about Babylon. We're not talking about 321 BC with Alexander the Great. It says that they were all smashed together. Then the iron, the bronze, the silver, and everything was smashed together and became like chaff from the summer threshing floor, and the wind carried them all away, so that no trace of them was found. And the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. Well, how does a great mountain fill the whole earth? That worried me for the last 20 years, and I reread it and reread it and I reread it. And I'll guarantee, too, it'll be you too, and a lot of your friends would have read it and thought, how does a mountain fill the whole earth? Well, when we read before where there's reference to a mountain, and now we've got a mountain that had a stone cut out of it by the hand of God, and it's destroyed all of these symbols of the dream that King Nebuchadnezzar had. It says in verse 44, and in the days of these kings, what kings? In the days of these kings, what kings? Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, Medo-Persia, Darius, Cyrus, Alexander the Great, Rome. In the days of these kings, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom which shall never be destroyed, and the kingdom shall not be left to other people, and it shall break into pieces and consume all of the kingdoms of the earth. Well, how's that going to be if Babylon was knocked out 500 or so years BC? Well, you can realise that it's not talking about war and conquering one sovereign conquering the other by war. We're talking here in this prophecy about religion, culture. And if you want to know why I say that, everything to do with our month, our years, our days, everything has a name after a god out of the Roman Empire, a god out of the Babylonian Empire, a god out of Greece. That's what we're talking about. Yahweh's kingdom, in other words, is the mountain that's going to take over the whole earth. Yahweh's kingdom is the great mountain, the holy mountain that you're reading in the scripture. And it's going to destroy all of the culture, religion, kingdoms of the earth, which have doctrines which, as I said, have been handed down by or from Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Rome, and so on, and including the Talmud version of the Jews. Don't forget the Talmud version of the Jews is an illegal document. Read to you, and you'll see on the screen shortly. I'm going to refer to verses in Ezekiel 38, Joel 3, Zechariah, Isaiah 13, Haggai 2, and Isaiah 65 in particular. Let me read some of the words that we're going to talk about. For thus says Yahweh of hosts, once more, in a little while, I will shake the heavens and the earth and the sea and the dry land. and I will shake all the nations, and the wealth of all the nations throughout the world will come here. And I will fill this temple with the glory. And he goes on to say, Yahweh speaking, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, says Yahweh of hosts. And the glory of this temple will be greater than the former. Now you've got to realize that if we go back to Nehemiah and we look at Zerubbabel and we look at when they rebuilt the temple, they came back out of Israel, everybody thinks that that prophecy was totally fulfilled. Well, no, it wasn't. Not at all. You might say that there's a dual application there, a dual prophecy, has two meanings, one for back then and one for up front, because most of that prophecy is yet to happen. For example, when he says in that prophecy that the temple will have his glory far higher, far more than the previous one, well, one thing is for sure and certain, as you know, the Ark of the Covenant wasn't there. They couldn't even find it then. And that had been missing now for hundreds of years. Now, let's go on and see what he says. Yahweh of hosts says, the glory of this temple will be greater than the former one. And Yahweh of hosts is speaking, and in this place I will give peace. Well, there was no peace given back then at the time of Zerubbabel or at the time of Nehemiah, the rebuilding of the temple. There was no peace. Yahweh of hosts says, I will shake the heavens and the earth. Again, he's talking about shaking the heavens and the earth at the time that there is a new temple being built. Well, that didn't happen. He didn't shake the heavens and the earth back at the time of Nehemiah or Zerubbabel. He says, I will destroy the thrones of the kingdoms. I will destroy the strength of the Gentile nations. That didn't happen. So that part yet has to happen. I will destroy the strength of the Gentile nations of the earth. I will overthrow the chariots. Now, when you read the words of the overthrowing of the chariots and those who ride on them, and the horses and the riders will be thrown off, well, you can talk about F-111s there, F-16s. You can talk about tanks. You can talk about all sorts of armory that there is today, because it is going to happen in the last days, and it is going to happen. If you think it won't happen, remember back in Egypt. He was going to destroy Egypt, and he did. But before he lifted his hand to destroy Egypt, he told the people exactly what he was going to do, how he was going to do it, and why did he do that? Again here. Why is he telling you? Because he's going to demonstrate his awesome power. You've got half the world, or more than half the world today, they don't believe in God. They don't believe in creation. They don't believe he exists. And again, he will demonstrate his awesome power, first of all, by telling you what he's going to do. And if you want to disbelieve the words that he's put down here that have been written thousands of years ago, that's okay. Let me read further. In Isaiah 65, again, Yahweh speaking, for behold, I will create a new heavens and a new earth. Well, how's he going to do that with you and I sitting around watching TV? You won't be hopping on a plane and going for a holiday overseas. He's going to create a new heavens and a new earth. And the former shall not be remembered or come to mind. Well, how's that going to happen? Because at the end of days, you've got people that are teaching there's going to be a rapture. And you're going to be taken up into some fairyland, grow some wings and run around up in the heavens like an angel. Well, all of that, I can tell you, is false theory, false teaching. I'll go further and tell you what it's going to say. And this is the word. You can read it in the book in Isaiah 65. There will be a return to the state or the code of Eden. The wolf and the lamb shall feed together. The lion shall eat straw like the ox, and dust shall be the serpent's food. And they shall not hurt nor destroy in my holy mountain. Where? In my holy mountain. So what's the holy mountain got to do with it? You've got a holy mountain mentioned in Daniel 2. Here it's mentioned in Isaiah, all about a holy mountain. So we better have a look at what the word mountain, and in particular the holy mountain, has to do with the end of time.